as well. And yeah, excited to talk about all the stuff you guys got going on, and have a little I don't want to say a sim battle. It sounds like a rap battle. But we can talk some sims. You know what Brian does, right, Justin? He's gonna quiz you about your process. What's under the hood over there?
Yeah, a little bit nervous about that, to be quite honest. After I saw the Whistles Go Woo episode, I've just been really fearful ever since. So my internet may suddenly go out if we start getting drilled too hard.
That's right.
No.
Yeah. Brian, are you playing DFS tonight?
I sure am.
Did you say you're dealing with late breaking news?
No, I was just doing stuff and didn't have time to upload my YouTube and stuff like that.
Oh, gotcha. You're slacking as a content creator, Brian. That's what I'm hearing.
I am slacking as a content creator. Had to do the Open, and we have NBA tonight too. So
yeah, what do they got? Is it just Showdown slate?
Yeah, just the finals right now.
Yeah. Justin, are you in any of the Showdown slate stuff? You've been too busy with the site.
Yeah, I've been pretty overwhelmed, honestly. So I haven't really touched anything since the Super Bowl, I think. So I've been pretty out of it.
Yeah. And Brian, are you what do we got going with is the Open on Sunday?
It's tonight.
The US Open starts tonight?
The British Open.
Oh God, look at this, man. Life comes at me so fast. I used to be a PGA DFS thought leader, guys, and look what's happened to me now. It's bad. Yeah. So Justin, no DFS play for you. You are all on the backside working on all the tools and stuff. What's the reception been like since you guys launched Run the Sims?
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible, honestly. Like, whenever you are working on a website and you just release it all of a sudden to the public, you're just super worried that stuff's going to break because you can't possibly stress test it like that any other way. So I'm like hoping that the apps aren't crashing. I'm hoping the site isn't crashing. Hope people can create accounts, like all these things. And so everything's been great, and people love the layout of the site. And I know everybody's kind of excited to see some of the sim stuff take place on a real slate. Like, we've got some sort of generic stuff up from NFL Week 1 of 2020, just as a placeholder for right now until DraftKings and all the other places release the slates. And so once we get that going, we'll have some fresh data up there. It's cool. So, I mean, it's like, it's interesting trying to figure out how to navigate these waters as a new company. We want to get everybody over to the site, obviously. So if anybody's watching this, go to runthesims.com, create you a free account. And when you get ready to sign up for the big boy package, use promo code Pete.
There you go. Look, this is why I had Justin on. He just does all my promotions for me. Brian,
what do you mean? What do you mean? If anyone's watching this, how dare you, sir?
Well, I don't want to overestimate it.
There's literally thousands of people that could hypothetically watch this. Brian, when do you think you will run your Week 1 NFL sim?
Sunday, Week 1, 11:02.
11:02 after inactives?
Yeah. No, hopefully I could do it before then, but it always seems like it takes till the last minute.
Yeah. So Justin, how are you going to handle that? Because I know talking to Brian about stuff, both the kind of, computing power it takes, especially if you're trying to simulate really large field stuff, can take a long time, lots of variables happening. Like, how is that going to work on the site as far as updated sims? What kind of contest sizes are you guys going to be able to simulate and that kind of stuff?
So we've actually managed to switch out some of the tech that I was doing last year. It used to take me about an hour to run a simulation. And this was we're talking about a 1-game slate, like a showdown slate. It took me about an hour to get through and optimize those. Now we can get a entire 16-game slate optimized and ran with simulations in about 30 seconds. So we've got a pretty unbelievable tech team that's put that together. So we can now, react to news much quicker on game day. So we'll have like a routine script running overnight throughout the vast majority of the week to get fresh information in there as it comes. But, obviously all hell breaks loose on Sunday mornings. And so as soon as we can get the projections updated, then the Sims can take over and be rerun in a matter of a minute or so.
We got a question from Lou here, and both you guys can answer this. What program is being used to power these sims?
Yeah, for me, it was R last year. Like that was how I got started in this was putting that program together in R. This year we'll be using a program called Golang. It's not a super popular program, but it's extremely fast. And so we're able to go play by play through all those games and spit it out. So that's our program of choice.
What are you spitting out?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the general process. Like what we're going to do is take all 16 games on the slate. We're going to pick a single game and we're going to essentially simulate our way through that game play by play. So not most places that are doing simulations aren't doing play by play simulations. They're doing kind of true Monte Carlo off of like a correlation matrix with projections. So what we're going to do is go play by play. And we're going to obviously define how many plays we're looking for and things like that to sort of define the parameter of the game. We'll go play by play, and play number one, Patrick Mahomes targeted to Tyreek Hill, pass incomplete. We're not assigning any fantasy points for that. Play number two, Tyreek Hill, pass complete to Travis Kelce, 14 yards, no touchdown. And now we're going to log all that off to the side. And so we're just going to go play by play until that game is over, simulate for both teams. And then we're going to calculate the fantasy point totals for that game and put that off to the side. And then I'm going to do that game 9,999 more times until eventually I've got 10,000 fantasy scores for every player, and they're fully correlated with their own teammates and with the opponents in that same game. So whereas like a correlation model, I would have to sort of like, sort of build in my own correlation levers, so to speak. This sort of does the correlation for us as we go. And then once we're done with game one, we move to game two all the way through game 16 until we've done an entire week. And then we're optimizing. So I've got a fantasy point number for every player in the player pool for simulation number one. And we're going to find the optimal, the nut lineup off of that. And so once we do that, we're going to do that through all 10,000 games as well. And I'll have essentially I can tell you exactly how many out of 10,000 lineups Tyreek Hill is in the optimal lineup. And so that gives you a pretty unique percentage number to compare against something like ownership and be able to make some decisions off those numbers. Sorry, that's probably pretty nerdy.
That's what we do around here.
So I think I'm following you. It sounds like kind of like what I call like a horse race sim. So like but you're doing it by play as opposed to what most people do, which is DFS points. So in these sims of all 16 games, let's say you do 10,000 sims, whatever, it doesn't really matter. In those 10,000, Tyreek Hill was optimal 9% of the time or something like that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And, I could probably drill down a little bit further than that. Like how often are Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill optimal together? Like that may be an important piece of information. And so, but yeah, I think that just having that optimal rate number and comparing that against ownership is going to be pretty powerful.
And then how are you controlling for field size with these simulations? Because obviously the optimals in a 50-person field is going to be way different than the Millie Maker.
So, and I should probably clarify there, optimal when I'm using it here does not mean like would be a winning lineup in a contest. I mean, it's the nut lineup, the best possible outcome lineup. So it's not always, you're not always trying to put together, you're pretty much never trying to put together the nut lineup in anything other than showdown. So yeah, you're not necessarily always, that's not always your goal, is to have like the exact perfect lineup. It may be optimal to have 3% Khalif Raymond, but you may never want any Khalif Raymond just because.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
So and also Pete, like there's different ownership for different tournaments. So
yeah.
You if you're gonna have a small field, the more high value sharper players are gonna be higher owned.
Yeah.
And so that you could still look at his optimal percentages and then just compare from there. But so nut lineup, optimal nut lineup would be like the highest sum total of all the positions from the sim of optimal. So like Tyreek Hill's 9%.
Yeah, you're trying to still fit. It's still a constraints problem. You're still trying to fit under the DK salary cap with a 9-person lineup and all that. But yeah, exactly.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so, Brian, I know when you do your stuff, I mean, the time would end up being an issue for the kind of sims you were running, right? For what was possible to run.
Yeah. What were you using? Duolingo? No, what was it called?
Go language?
Go language? I've never heard of that. So I mean, that was a big mistake telling me that, buddy. Your site's going to be out of business by the weekend. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I'm switching over to R this year from Excel and some like Excel stat programs. And it's just so much faster. So if he's doing something even faster than R, it's definitely feasible.
What is that? Because I know for a lot of people who have that R, there's obviously tons of great resources to learn it, but there is a learning curve. Is that something you've been teaching yourself right now, Brian, or is that not something you have to be in the weeds of?
I'm like not good at it at all because I've spent.
Ryan's freezing on us.
80% of my time doing Excel, and so I just pay someone.
Yeah, okay.
Pay someone to do what I want.
Gotcha.
You don't have. I mean, when you're starting out, you want like a bare minimum in all these. I think. Like I don't have any bare minimum in Python, but like you want some sort of bare minimum and probably pick one. Like obviously you're not building your own site like Justin here, and you're not going to build out a big model like mine probably unless you start doing it. So you want like a bare minimum, and I'd consider myself pretty close to an expert in Excel. I'm pretty good, and but like at a certain point, for me, it's like for $100 I can get someone to do something that'll take me 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and pretty similar story here. Like when I started this, like in the last pretty much this time last year, I wrote out this really dumb algo in Excel, and is like, okay, it can run this algo, but it's super slow. Like it couldn't accommodate more than like maybe 100 sims before it like is going to turn my machine off. And so like with the help of a couple other people, we got into like a really nice Excel model, and then it became an R model, and now it's kind of evolved into this Go model. And so it's become exponentially faster as we go.
How do you guys think about the idea of projections and simulations? I guess I'm trying, like, simulation encompasses all of it, but is it still like if you put shit in, you get shit out kind of thing, no matter how good the simulation itself is? How do you guys untangle thinking about projections versus the simulation?
I mean, the simulations make the projections.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion.
So I actually approach it just a little bit differently. I start with the baseline assumptions that are going to feed into the simulator because I need the target shares, I need the rushing shares, and that sort of thing.
I thought he meant fantasy point projections. Like no. Yeah, like targets. Yeah, exactly. How many passes you expect in the game and all that stuff. I wasn't thinking like that, but yeah, for sure you need all that, and then from that we'll give you fantasy point projections, which is what I thought you were saying.
Right. Yeah, so, but you could do shorthand math a lot quicker, to come up with like a fantasy point total if you're just multiplying opportunity times efficiency, essentially.
Yeah. And then or just run regressions on past data, and then you can get yourself something pretty close to a fantasy point projection. All that stuff though is like 2018 and before. Like if I was starting, like I don't know if I'd even put a ton of time into making my own projections.
Brian, well, here's your famous question, Brian, because it was before of how many guys were making their own projections at the top levels of DFS. How many guys do you think are running their own simulations?
80% of people? Nah, I don't know.
If you were watching this, you are likely building your own simulations.
Well, after everybody gets a subscription at runthesims.com/Pete, then we're going to really tilt the entire field.
There you go. Also, Racif here saying that, season-long sims have Eckler at 4. And then he was also saying, and this is true, you can upload the rankings on Run the Sims directly to Underdog. So if you are in there getting in those best ball streets, and the action is absolutely insane right now, that's a good way to get the rankings in there. And even having different rankings is nice because everyone's so anchored to the ADP right now that just having like somewhat unique drafts is really good. Like if the Run the Sims rankings have some sleepers that are popping a little earlier, like that's the one way you can get unique in the best ball drafts, right? Because you do a DFS draft and the whole field can, or you can get contrarian more easily against the field. In best ball, like 15 rounds worth of players are going to be owned in every single draft. So if you can just get off the beaten path with one or two of those last picks, like last year it was James Robinson, Mike Davis, guys that weren't drafted in every draft. Not only did those guys help you win your league just because they're raw points, but they differentiated you in a GPP type sense in the playoff week. So that's a long way of saying like trying to have a unique perspective or angle, whether through ranks or through correlation, is a way to really help you out in those best ball streets.
Yeah, and even like you can get different in the first couple rounds too. Like like I've got Eckler at 4, and I know that's like a scorching hot take. He's probably going around 9 or so right now, maybe 11. So somewhere towards the tail end of the first round. I'm also super high on Calvin Ridley. Like I think he could actually be the wide receiver 1 this year. Like you might end up pairing Eckler Ridley, for example, and have a much different start to your draft and sort of maybe have a team that's very unlikely to be duplicated even up top, even if you play it sort of chalky the rest of the way.
So I've been thinking about that. I don't think Eckler and Ridley's a good example for that because they are viable to get normally at the turn.
Yeah.
But I have been, and we talked about this on Ship Chasing last week. And Brian, I know you're not in the weeds with this, but I am curious your thoughts on this idea of like giving up projected points for being unique. But like this idea, Stephon Diggs normally goes like it's within the same range. It's between like 110 to 2-1 every draft. So if you take him at 1-3, you are then pairing him with a back into the second round, an early third round guy that Diggs will normally never be paired with just based on how anchored he is to that late first, early second ADP. So I've been thinking about that, and I don't think you're giving up a lot of projected points. Once McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook are off the board, like you can make cases for a decent amount of guys. So I have been thinking about that. Brian, I know you aren't in the weeds, but does that sound crazy to you, or what does that sound like?
No, no, but I'd have the same answers. Like there's like basically 2 ways to figure it out, which is regressions, modeling based off of past data, and or sims. I can sim it out and see if it matters.
So, Justin,
that's a complicated question, honestly, to get to the actual answer.
Yeah, the number of variables you'd have to introduce over the course of a season-long simulation are pretty unbelievable. I mean, you probably have a tough time projecting like Derrick Henry gets hurt, and I can think of 3 guys off the top of my head who might be the guy who would come in that situation. Like, so you'd have to go through like this whole complicated decision tree of ifs and thens, to properly model out an entire season.
The way I think about all these type of questions is like the Van Neumann game theory book. So like you make the simplest game possible and try to beat that. So you try to find things, try to simplify the problem you're trying to answer, and then sim that or model that out, and then extrapolate from there. And just even getting some of the simple ideas, right? Like back in the GTO poker days when those guys first started, you're such miles above the field that you don't need to get all 800,000 variables and make sure that the Derrick Henry question is in there. You know what I mean? Or maybe you just solve for injury somehow or something. You simplify it. I got a question in my YouTube. Does your Sims take game context into account, i.e. blowouts where teams leading or running the balls more?
So yes and no, to answer that. Basically, what we do is allow for that type of game situation to happen, but we're going to still utilize the same projected target share to figure out who the guys are getting the targets. In other words, it'd be really tough to project the situation where, the third string running back or the backup quarterback's now in the game, or the third string running back is now in the game because it's just like an entire blowout. Like that's going to be a tough thing to sort of logically get to. But, what we can do is in the course of these simulations, we're going to have basically every possible game script happen exactly as often as it should happen, if that makes sense. The only thing we don't have to do, the ability to do, is trigger different player requirements in those types of games. We can make the entire game lean more run heavy or pass heavy, but for something like that, but I can't change exactly, if the Patriots all of a sudden are trailing and now James White's going to have a 30% target share game in that type of game, I can't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. There's a lot of problems when you're trying to build out a full simulation.
Yeah. And like back at your last point, this is far from a perfect model, but as long as it's better than what the vast majority of the field's doing, we feel, pretty good about our advantage. So it has some like known weaknesses, no doubt about that. And I'd love for it to be able to accommodate more things related to injury, more things related to extreme game scripts and backup usage and things like that. But for right now, we still want to focus on like, what are the more likely things to happen and trigger there.
Yeah, with that idea of what are the more likely things to happen, then how does like range of outcomes factor into that? And obviously, we can look at, production graphs, over the course of the season. I know ETR and their stuff, they'd post their little bands as far as like where, so like the ceiling for those guys, what's their floor production. And we all know like the Sterling Shepherds are going to have a lower floor than like a Darius Slayton, who can rack up, long touchdowns. So how does that, because what we're always trying to do in DFS and Showdown is we're trying to bink those outlier outcomes. Those are what help us win. So when you're having to work off of kind of like the most likely scenario, how do you reconcile that with, we want an actual outlier scenario in our lineups?
Yeah, I think the thing is like we don't want to confuse the fact that like we're looking for this true ceiling, this 100th percentile type outcome. Like we can get by living on 80th percentile outcomes across the board. Like just lock me in at 80th percentile for everybody and we'll go print some cash. But obviously we know we can't even guarantee that either. Like, I mean, there's no real way of knowing whether a player is going to hit his 80th or his 20th percentile. Those things are equally as likely to happen. So, basically what we're going to do when we simulate out the slate and we collect all those fantasy point totals, we can show that off as essentially a bell curve, like a distribution curve. For some players that may lean a little bit one way or the other, lean a little low, lean a little high. But also we have like a percentile projections tool on the site. So that's all free. Anybody can, if they're surfing up there currently, go under the DFS tab, click on percentile projections, and you'll be able to see like what is the 75th percentile outcome for Derrick Henry in this game. And so if you wanted to, you could sort of download those and use those to work off of and have an idea to compare apples to apples. Cause like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to build tournament lineups with median outcomes. We're not looking for median performances.
Could I say something too really quick is the strange scenarios and distributions and backups and stuff is a lot more important the smaller the slate is, especially in like a showdown situation. Mm-hmm. And depends on the sport too. But you got to like your question, Peter, of like the distributions. Like this is very hard. This is a big, huge part of dialing in a really accurate sim, and it's really hard. But I bet Cardi does very similar to what Justin does, and one of my sims sounds like it's pretty similar, and it's kind of built in that ceiling type of idea because the simulation's like a Monte Carlo, like there's random chance of things occurring. We know what it's a pass. He throws a pass. Tyreek Hill catches it. Tyreek Hill's roll on those yardage is going to have a bigger distribution. And so in all those sims, he's going to catch 3 50-yarders eventually for 3 touchdowns or something. Yeah. Right. So it's like built in. It's not, it's gonna happen. And then he can go and look, and then you could look at the data after all these simulations and then tabulate, okay, Tyreek Hill's ceiling is 55 fantasy points or something like that.
Right. Here's getting back into the weeds. It looks like Racif's going through the projections over there on Run the Sims. This one pops out to me too here. Devonta Smith at wide receiver 18, ahead of some established incumbents like Cooper, DJ Moore, and then the ascending CeeDee Lamb. Any thoughts on your aggressive ranking on Devonta Smith, Justin?
Yeah, and I should also point out that the season long stuff is not simulation based; it's projection based, and so you're getting some raw projections there. And I do love Devonta Smith this year, and part of it has to do with the fact that I have not thrown in the towel on Jalen Hurts, and I don't really quite understand why everybody seems to have thrown in the towel on him. Not very many starts under his belt. A lot of reason to suspect that offense gets a little bit better this year, and there's really no competition. Like, I don't believe Jalen Reagor is all that great, and I think Devonta Smith is a tremendous prospect, and so I have a hard time keeping him, under like 120 targets or so this year. Like, I think he's going to easily walk his way into that in year one, and as long as he can be even moderately efficient. And we've seen he's got, like, if anybody watched the national championship game, this dude's got phenomenal ceiling capability. I don't quite understand why everybody's sleeping on him.
And I will say too, like I would say my gut and how I've been drafting disagrees with that rank. But one of the things that's fun to do, and what Justin and I were doing on our show last week, which you guys can check out, I think it's called How to Make Your Own Projections from last week, is you can go in and you can tweak those assumptions based on target share. Like, I might go in and be like, Justin, you're drunk with, what is it? You probably have him at like a 24-25% target share, I would guess, at that ranking.
Yeah, probably low 20s.
Yeah. And so you can say, all right, no, I actually think Goddard is going to be the focal point of this offense. I think Reagor is going to make a year two leap. I'm going to put, him back in the 17 to 18% target share. Probably drops his wide receiver ranking significantly down to like, wide receiver 30 or something. So that's the one thing that's fun, that you can go in and adjust those baseline assumptions yourself. And my guess is that's just happening because of Justin's aggressive market share for him.
Yeah, exactly. So go in, projection builder, absolutely free. Go in there and tweak it around. All you gotta do is get a free account. That way we can save your stuff from one session to the next. But yeah, hop in there and switch those numbers up. I've got Devonta at 24 and Reagor at 16. Maybe you think it's closer to 2020 there. And both of those guys would obviously bump up and down quite a bit. I just think Devonta Smith's really explosive.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a really interesting use case, I think, because he has a lot of things coming to a head as far as analytics. He crushed from the production side, but as far as being an older prospect and not declaring early, those things can generally be red flags for those guys. But then obviously awesome. And people are a little worried about his frame too. Like,
174.
We're in the era of everyone posting, thick thigh guys, and he looks like a teenager's like twig legs out there.
Seriously.
Brian, how much do you zone out when we start getting in the weeds about specific
I zoned out pretty
takes?
hardcore right there. I'm like, did the DFS season start, or why are we talking about this?
Because we're in the best ball streets, Brian.
I gotta do some of those. DK doesn't have the PC option. So stupid. Unless they change that.
Is there anywhere else you can play best ball?
Underdog.
Have you signed up for Underdog, Brian?
I did. Underdog Pete. I signed up and haven't even used it.
Wow.
What's your wager section here? I see you got a bunch of odds calculators. Are you gonna
I'll
tout it up and make some picks?
No, I mean, we're not in the picks business, but we will have a prop tool up there. So essentially, you'll be able to click on any player, any stat category, and the available line and the juice on the over under, and we'll spit out essentially a value chart there. You'll see a curve with if it's Pat Mahomes over under 299.5 passing yards at minus 115 on each side or whatever it might look like. You'll be able to go over there, check that out, and essentially we'll show you that he actually hits the under 58% of the time. That's good enough for such and such a bet according to Kelly, and you'll get some basically a true probability according to the Sims.
So that is using the Sims yardage and stuff like that too?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Why don't you just spell it out for people?
Yeah, it's using the Sims yardage.
I mean, all you got to do is get the APIs from the sports books, and you have the data there.
That's possibly coming. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Brian, what's good with your app that because I know you've been working on that.
It's slow coming. Working with people. It's out right now, but I'm not like promoting it because it's not totally ready.
Yeah.
And so like most of it works, but like it's Top Shot beta. So
yeah,
I'm not ready to really promote it, but yeah, it's pretty cool. It's just like the whole premise mainly was like for tools that were pissing me off betting. So like the I don't know if you guys bet at all, but like the sites log you off after like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of non-activity. So if you're like betting live, or let's say you're going to a source and then going like you're reading up on a player and then go back and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put a bet. You're logged off. So like it keeps you on like an auto open too. Like I have an it'll auto open all the sports books at once, because like if you want to hit some Steam or something, like you get an injury news, you just bam, auto opens and auto logs you in. And although that will get you banned eventually, but if you're a losing player, you should probably do it anyways. And but the main thing is it takes like anything you want to put, like Osmo's numbers or establish the runs, or I have mine on there, or anyone who wants to be on there, it doesn't really matter, and overlays the data on the sports book. So you could just go to the sports book and be like, oh, crap bet. Oh, ETR thinks this is good. Bet it over. And instead of spending 20 minutes sorting through all this stuff, it's just overlaid like a poker HUD. I stole the idea from the old poker HUD that we used to use. I'm sure these poker players still use it now, but yeah.
This is also a good suggestion. I know this because I got one of these during the Top Shot Mania, and I was like refreshing to see listings, and it got one of those auto refresh extensions to trick the book into thinking you're still active, although not as clean of a solution.
No, mine has like 4 different solutions on there, and like 4 different ways to keep it open. And so you never know what they're going to change and pull. And
yeah. Brian, here's Justin, a meta question for you, because I feel, are you going to be the one updating all of kind of the baseline inputs like on a Sunday, after lock? And then the question being like, I feel like it's a lot being in the weeds on all of that stuff, ingesting all the information, getting it up, also doing I know you're not specifically going to be doing content, but like running the business side, making sure everything's getting pushed out, promoted it. To me, I'm just getting stressed out thinking if I had to do all of that on top of content, how are you planning to handle all that?
Yeah, the good news is that over the next month and a half, as we lead up to the season, I have a much better idea of what my ability to hire other people will look like. So that'll be a big step. And obviously, if we don't hit like huge numbers or anything, then I have fewer issues to worry about in terms of volume type things, and I'll be able to focus a little bit more on actually making sure the projections are great. And if we actually take off and rocket ship this thing and hit the milestones I have in my head, then I can offload some of the more business side things to somebody else. So there's some plans. There's fortunately a little bit of time. The initial like signups have been really good, and so we're pointing in an encouraging direction. So definitely something I got on the front of my brain. Like I've got buddies who want to like schedule trips and stuff to go to a game. Yeah, we always go to the Washington Cowboys game in DC every year. And like I don't know if I can go this year or not. I might be like slaving away at the projections.
Yep. This is why Brian never goes on vacation. He's a slave to the Sims.
That and gambling CTE, that'll do it to you.
That's right.
Brian, you mentioned earlier, you kind of had the caveat of like, not sure if you guys bet or not. I saw there was a little bit of controversy going around over the last week or two about skin in the game and whether you're even qualified to provide betting advice if you're not betting. I don't live in a legal betting sports state, and I'm not super interested in chasing offshores. And betting itself has never been like the most interesting thing to me. Like in general, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Will you give me the primer for this, I assume, Twitter conversation? I completely missed this.
Yeah, no, it was the general idea was, why should you or would you trust the advice of somebody who isn't betting the bets that they're recommending to you?
Pete does so much content, he forgot we did a whole episode on this.
No, we have, but you made it seem like there was a recent Twitter spat about this, and I think I missed the recent spat.
It came back up again. Yes, it's the same conversation again.
I must have missed that as well. Yeah, I did. After I thought about it, I didn't defend an analogy I used talking to Pete as well as I thought. I'm like, damn, I wish I would have said this about skin in the game. But like, I would say for you, I think it would be what's the nicest word? Foolish or whatever, to not use your sims to price props.
Yeah.
Especially if you could do it in 30 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, go on Bovada and bet a couple if that makes you feel better. But
right.
But like, make sure that you're plus EV, but it should be. It's not super hard, but like make sure your sims are beating the line. I mean, a lot of sites don't do that, but I would say like make sure you're beating at least opening lines and closing lines. But on props, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like what was you might have to fill me in here. So I guess I am having a hard time coming up with, you're working really hard to gain an edge, you find your angle, and then you decide I'm not going to bet it, but I'll put this out there for other people because I need to feed the content machine. And so I think the implication is, you're just feeding the content machine. You don't actually have conviction in this bet if you're not putting money on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that comes down to a fundamental like content creation difference too, right? Like some people, it's not really their shtick to try to nail the picks as much. The whole idea is to make an entertaining podcast or a entertaining website or whatever. But yeah, for us, obviously, like we don't quite have that personality. We're trying to, be precision players and everything. But yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not, going to catch flack down the road for touting props and not betting them.
You're going to catch flack from the sports betting community no matter what you do. It seems.
Yeah, they're a prickly community. But I would say I guess like providing tools is a completely different. That's the teaching people how to fish versus giving them the fish, which shout out Ben the Better. I mean, like living that life, that's a tough life to live. Like where you're not showing your work, you're not like, giving the reasons why. I know you're doing stuff now too with Court Smith from Bet the Prop. And one of the reasons I always like their sports betting stuff is they give you the reasons. They point to the baseline analytics data that is driving them to those bets. When you just get a screenshot of this is my card, it's really hard for me to have any faith in that.
Yeah, I think that's what people appreciate is some sort of process. I mean, people really just want to bet whatever their prior said to bet in the first place, and they're looking for some confirmation bias. So I think you just need to cast a large net there.
Yeah,
I think too with this, what Brandon's saying here in Pete's chat is like the whole Spanky, then Justin, J-Mac and him got in a little kerfuffle, and J-Mac I think was a little aggressive there, but but I don't think the sports bettors get DFS that much, and I actually think the DFS guys are right, where it's like Spanky was saying like whoever's touting the All-Star game is a complete fraud or something, and then like J-Mac took that personally, although they do have some sports betting part to their site too, so whatever. But from the DFS side or something, I would say that's not true. Like you could still like figure out like the ownership game and stuff like that, like to some degree that can help other people, or like you really know baseball and like you have a good sense of like who's going to stay in the game longer in an all-star game, or what pitchers are unlikely to pitch because they're going to be their next scheduled start is the day after the, on Saturday or whatever, a Friday, and stuff like that. Like clearly that can help somebody in DFS. So
Yeah. And we've talked about this before too. It's like everyone's motivations for why they're sports betting, whether it's just for entertainment, they want to get a little sweat in, versus I can't imagine that there are any like true edge, bettors that are just tailing some guy's card with no discernible process. Like I don't even know how that would be repeatable. Brian?
They might be if they're betting the opposite.
Yeah. Have you still been doing the oppo betting?
Yes. But
yes. How's that going?
But I do need to get in that Patreon streets. It's definitely something. I'm worried about that gravy train will run out. But yeah, I don't see why not. You could bet someone's opposite. You ever read that sports betting book? It's really popular in the online sports betting community. God,
Logic of sports betting?
No. It was before that. It was the guy from like the SBR forums. Risk assessing something risk. God, so maybe somebody in the chat reminds me. It was probably like 15 years old now. Anyways, he built a model that was so bad someone bought it off of him. to bet the opposite.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. I actually
feel something I can't remember his last name.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. Well, this Justin was saying here would be cool to see a running the Sims win rate on prop jets, just a cumulative tally throughout the year. Everyone loves to see their receipts. What's it called, Brian?
Conquering Risk.
Conquering Risk. Brian, also just FYI, your internet is more skittish than usual tonight.
Oh, really? That looks fine to me. Let me check.
No, your audio's been pretty decent, but your video's been lagging behind a little bit. I just assumed you were running multiple simulations.
Might have been.
I was on the wrong channel. I wasn't on my Wi-Fi extender. This should be better.
There we go.
Well, Brian, I showed up my skirt. What? Tell me about your projection process.
I'm just gonna use Run the Sims.
That's a good call.
Yeah. So I have no answer for you. Sorry, buddy.
How close are our processes?
That is exactly how I did my simulation for football. It sounds like you might. I don't know. I'd have to see getting the nuts and bolts of yours, but that's exactly what I do. So, how many passes are there going to be, and then what's the distribution of those passes? Okay, is it a pass or is it a run? Okay, who catches it? Okay, what's the distribution for that guy who catches it? And then that's it. And touchdowns too.
Yep.
And we know the answers to a lot of these things, so you just have to work your way back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's so good. I didn't realize you were doing play-by-play. I kind of am operating under the assumption that there's not a lot of people who are doing that. So
I know a couple.
You know a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
All of Brian's friends in his photos that are pictured just outside the frame. It's that meme where the people are dancing at the party and they don't know I do individual play-by-play data in my Sims. Someone make that meme for us. Thank you.
That's good.
Justin, did you get the answer you're looking for, or do you want to turn the screws on him a little more?
Yeah, no, I mean, he wouldn't have let me off the hook that easily if the tides were turned. Yeah. Well, so it sounds like it sounds like we're kind of coming at it from a similar perspective. We're like, essentially, we're going to draw a box around this game that is this, and the size of this box is going to accommodate so many plays based on how big the box is, right? So we're gonna start with a baseline number of plays from each team, and then sort of correlate, well, if this team's more likely to run, then that team's a little more likely to pass and stuff like that. And essentially now we're looking, and the Chiefs in this game are running 5 plays more than average or expectation. So we're going to tend towards assuming their opponent is going to run some number fewer plays than expected and stuff like that. And basically we're going to try to do as much to correlate before the game, before we start querying Sims. We're going to try to like match the teams up based on what they would tend to do when one team does X, the other team would do Y.
I mean, that's what you do, is what you're telling me?
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm kind of like, I don't know about you. I feel like more okay talking about this because the odds, I mean, I can't tell you how much work it's taken to get to this point. Like if somebody wants to try to rip the site off, like by all means go for it. Like it'll be really hard. I can promise that. So I don't mind talking through the process.
Well, yeah, the problem with talking through the process isn't the guys who can't do it. It's the guys who can. You don't want to make a monster, you know what I mean? You don't want to make one guy who's like, oh shit, I didn't think of that, and who's got obsessive problems and gambling CTE.
And might be an adjunct professor at the University of Connecticut. Here's a question from Racef on the projections, Justin. Is there a way that you'll be able to add small plus minus variances other than manually to these sim projections?
I'm not entirely sure I understand, but basically what you'll be able to do is go into any slate, any game in that slate, and modify the player level assumptions and the team level assumptions.
Yeah.
So you could go in and be like, okay, Justin's crazy. This is not a 20% Tyreek Hill game. This is a 30% Tyreek Hill game. Let's go in there, turn it up. Chief scoring, turn that up to 60. You know, like we want to see what happens when that happens. And so we'll run that out. And so you could run that and get the results back. And you could try like a bunch of different game scripts and just be like, oh, this is actually creating some pretty funky little lineups. And what we'll essentially do is, like, this is cool and all on classic slates. This is going to be really great on classic slates, but on showdown slates, you can actually, we're going to give you optimal lineups. It's sorted by order of frequency. How often does that unique combination duplicate itself? So if the answer to the question is captain spot Kelsey, flex Mahomes, flex Hill, flex David Johnson, flex blah, 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 like, and that happens in 87 out of 10,000 simulations, that's a pretty great number, right? So you could play that lineup. Now you have to make some decisions about, well, how many other people are going to play that lineup too, right? So you've got it, but you've at least got some sort of rooted probability of that lineup happening. 87 out of 10,000 times, just shy of 1%, right? So 0.87%, that's pretty great odds. If you gave me 0.87% odds to take down a showdown with a single lineup, yeah, I'll probably play that lineup. So yeah, just go in there and play with those.
Yeah, the variance is built into the simulation. Like
exactly,
like I said, like Tyreek Hill will catch one for 4 yards and then catch one for 60 yards. Like, can they adjust that, like to Tyreek Hill's?
So you cannot adjust yardage. Yardage is kind of the secret sauce, it's model based, and it really just wouldn't work if I let you key in an average.
It's distribution. It's a distribution. Then.
Exactly. So that's all imprinted into Tyreek Hill's DNA in the site. Essentially, is he's some.
You could adjust that depending on the distribution you use, but like for the most accurate ones, you can't. You shouldn't. You shouldn't anyways.
And so it sounds like the tweaking would come in more handy on the showdown slates where you are wanting to play out certain scenarios to an extreme where you probably get yourself in a decent bit of trouble doing it across the main slate.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to be too bold on the main slate. It just the advantage isn't there. In a showdown, you're trying to capture combinations more so than players. Obviously, combinations are important on main slate too, but not to the extent that they are on showdown. Yeah,
man, I'm getting excited for showdown football. Again, it's going to be here before we know. I know I've asked you a few times. Do you think we're going to have anything to do for preseason, or are we going to still be kind of getting this stuff ready?
Yeah, I'd rather not promise any preseason. Maybe if we can deliver some preseason, that'd be great. But we want to make sure we hit our deadlines and stuff along the way. And while I think preseason is a lot of fun, actually, simulation's not all that intriguing for preseason, I don't think, because like you're just going to be so off on your guesses. I mean, even if you think you have a read on something, you're just better off to project it out and playoff projections.
Yeah,
for sure. Let's see. Justin asking me, I've definitely been messing around with the projection tool. I like messing around with certain team situations and seeing how the various target shares could, quickly bump up an ancillary wide receiver and see how that could play out. I will say I personally don't trust myself to go overhaul every team by team projection to spit out my own. But someone like Pat could definitely do that. And I know he's done his own projections before. I like using it more to kind of analyze certain cases, like especially when I'm drafting the same guy over and over. It's a fun way to go in there and kind of challenge your assumptions about a guy I've become extremely confident on. And you realize, oh, I adjust his target share down 2 percentage points, and all of a sudden he's a guy who drops 2 rounds in value. And you're like, okay, that's how fragile this whole drafting thing is. And it goes back to the ADP thing again. We all get so anchored to the ADP, these median projections, not realizing how extremely fragile they actually are.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that would be how I would use it too. Like, sure, you can go in and tweak my numbers up 1% or 2% or down 1 or 2 across the board or make slight adjustments, but you're going to be better off by like projecting out Justin Fields for a full season in Chicago, whereas I have him for like 3/4 of the games currently. Like, go in there and see what happens when he's the quarterback, and maybe you want to bump up some efficiency numbers because playing with Justin Fields for 16 games is better than 4 games of Andy Dalton. Like, that sucks. So yeah, go in there and play with that. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that we did that with Trey Lance on our show last week, and that's what helped us. You look at his median projection. Justin, I think, had a safer assumption. I think it was almost splitting the season with Garoppolo, which I think is like a fairly conservative assumption. And so that put him at like QB 15 or 16. Well, then we got him up to starting the whole season or closer to that, and he could jump up all the way to QB 10. Then we started upping his rushing statistics a little bit, his efficiency. All of a sudden you get up to QB 9, QB 8, and then you see the ceiling case. And then you see, okay, this is why I don't mind drafting him at QB 13, because I know there's still some meat on the bone. So I do agree too, for those situations where we're truly guessing, like you can go in there. Actually, I don't know if you could do this. I was just going to say, can you put Aaron Rodgers on the Broncos on there?
Ooh, no, you can't, but you could create a proxy for Aaron Rodgers. You can call Drew Lock Aaron Rodgers and then
adjust his,
crank everybody up. Yeah, you could do that.
There you go. So that would be a fun one too. I would be curious to see how much all of those pass catchers, Sutton, Judy, Noah Fant, would pop if you put Rodgers there. I assume it'd be pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it'd be pretty overwhelming. I mean, I think like just sort of eyeballing it off the top of my head, like you're going to bump up the catch rate for every one of those guys 5% right off the bat. You're going to crank up their yards per reception, another 2 yards. It's going to be bananas usage. You're going to go in there and crank up the pass volume for the Broncos offense quite a bit. Like, and then you think about, well, you just turned 3 levers right there: an efficiency, a volume, and a team volume. And now all of a sudden, Cortland Sutton's a low-end wide receiver 1.
Yep.
Where do you come down on Sutton versus Judy? Like, are you intrigued by that at all?
I still prefer Sutton. I mean, what Sutton did with Locke at the end of last year, or before he got injured, that season before, was just incredible. He was really, really good. Judy was earning a ton of targets last year after Sutton went down, but was like horribly efficient. Had one of the worst downfield catch rates in the league. He was like this empty calorie air yards king. So I don't know. I don't like betting against like wide receivers that were drafted high and flashed a little bit in year 1. But I think Sutton is still the safer bet there. And all the reports are his rehab has gone excellent, and he's in really good shape. The problem, I don't think, is either of them. I think with a good quarterback, both of them could be very, very successful. I just worry that the offense isn't going to be conducive to that.
I'm sorry, Brian, for bringing up a football question in the middle of this episode.
We can't help ourselves sometimes.
Take a little nap.
Yeah. What was else going to? Oh, yeah. So you said Sims 10,000 unique lineups. My thought was here. So we have in the NFT space all these 10,000 NFT generative art projects. Have you thought about releasing each lineup as its own NFT and accompanying avatar? That could really help you out.
That's probably a little bit better margins on that, right?
I think so. From what I've learned is you can, put your blood, sweat, and tears into a project and make a tenth of how much you would just selling an NFT.
Yeah, I think we gotta consider that for sure. But no, it's gonna be fun. I'm a little bit worried, like, as you know, especially as Brian and I are talking about sort of the details here. Like, I don't want to overwhelm people with the fact that this is like, it's built on like a fairly complex process, right? But we've hopefully designed this in a way that's like super user friendly and that people can kind of run with it. And as Pat Mayo and I were kind of talking, getting this thing off the ground, we were, the general idea was like, we're going to make Fantasy National, but for football. And so, being a tools only site, I'm interested to see whether people will gravitate towards it and find it useful, or I don't want it to be too overwhelming, and hopefully we'll limit the number of knobs and levers, for everybody, to make the information super streamlined. But it's kind of a concern too. Like, I don't know how you felt about that since kind of getting to know the product.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Were you talking to
to you, Pete?
Sorry. I got distracted there. Will you say that last part again?
I was saying, I don't know if you have felt like things like the site, like the tools are too overwhelming or anything like that in terms of like learning curve or anything.
I don't find them overwhelming. I think it's just, we're also in that process or time right now where, like, we got the guys in the chat right now who are, doing jokes with the target shares. They're very apt to hop in, adjust it. I think a lot of the people coming in right now to play best ball, they are the kind of like, don't teach me how to fish, just give me the fish. So that, and I talked to you about that. I was a little concerned of like the larger audience. Are they going to want to get in the weeds with this? But I do think come DFS time, I think the tools are very intuitive to use. And when people are playing DFS, it's the kind of stuff they're going to like to use. And I think the sim stuff is going to be very intriguing for people too. And it is a new thing. Like, they hear Brian talk about it, and it is the next frontier of DFS play. And so I think as we get closer to DFS season, the interest is gonna ramp up. But right now, it's only the sickos in there adjusting Tim Tebow's target share.
Is Tebow going to make a roster this year? I'm actually vaguely intrigued by that storyline.
Yeah. So my thing is, like, I think Urban Meyer is just absolutely crazy. I feel like this is like a Chip Kelly situation all over, where he's like this egomaniacal dude that's going to just do all kinds of weird shit and not utilize his talent in the most optimal way. Like, I feel like we're going to get Carlos Hyde is just going to get an obscene amount of carries this year. And I'm legitimately worried about Urban Meyers, because people are getting excited about Lawrence and this offense. I really want to be excited about it, but I think Urban Meyer could just be a stone disaster as a head coach.
Yeah, he could. He's also been super successful, so there's that too. It could go a lot of different ways. Well, I feel like we're probably close to the end of our time. We haven't talked at all about libertarianism or Bitcoin, and I'm just a little bit put off by that.
Or Top Shot.
Oh, yeah. I know.
Or NFTs.
Yeah, seriously.
We did get a brief NFT mention. That was good. So we'll mint these lineups and then rake in some profits.
Yeah.
Shout out to Outdoors real quick.
Shout out to Ricky D. The one plug, use promo code Ricky D next time you're outdoors. It'll get you an extra bit of sunlight and vitamin D with that promo code. I love people have been tagging Ricky with their outdoor photos. Thank you, Ricky, for inspiring me to go outdoors. But thank you, Justin, for hopping on tonight. Very excited to be working with you guys. I think it's going to be a great year. And guys, if you want to hop in there, all the stuff we've been talking about with the season long, it's all free. You can go sign up, get a free account, go poke around in there, boost Tebow up to a 32% target share, Urban Meyer's wet dream. And then comes DFS season, you will be able to get all of the DFS tools with the subscription. You can even lock in the Founders Club rate right now, and it includes a bankroll tracker as well. You guys want to be in the streets with me this year, tracking our single entry bankroll series, all that good stuff. You can head over there. I got the links down below all over at Run the Sims. Brian, anything else in your neck of the woods, a hot take to get off here?
Yes. I had a hot take tweet about Osmo if anyone wants to check it out. But
I got to see this.
What was I going to say? Oh, next week there's no Lolz.
That's correct. I'm going to be away next week. No night shows for me. I'm going to try to do a proper kind of vacation before my life goes crazy. But Brian, you have my permission to run something without me if you want.
I will not be doing that. So it's better this way. I can blame it on Pete and just like hold it over him.
He does hold it over me. That one show we missed last year.
And so then 2 weeks after that, though, we do have a special guest coming on.
Is he booked?
He's booked, and let's just say he's the most loyal man in DFS. Okay.
Wow.
Surprise guest 2 weeks from now.
And he is not going to tout the outdoors. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, probably not.
All right. That's a nice tease for 2 weeks from now. Thank you to Justin. We're going to have lots of more stuff coming with Run the Sims as we get gearing up for NFL season. Justin, I assume there's nothing else you want to plug beyond Run the Sims.
No, I think I've done that plenty so far, and I appreciate it, guys.
All right, guys. We will see you in 2 weeks. Peace.